Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ondrej Krehel, and like most of my living by consulting in cybersecurity and digital forensics. I want to show you a little bit different view on a web exploitation, the way we see it when we go and investigate certain incidents that do happen. I would say 60% of the work that we do relates to PCI DSS exploitation. So it really means someone exploiting web vulnerabilities on e-commerce platform, and then basically extracting data from a databases which are primarily PCI DSS data. All right, so what do I really do for a living? I tried to explain to my mom, and I was explaining, and she was not really getting it. So I told her I'm a digital firefighter. So when people have a digital fire, I go, right? However, I do not have a luxury to retire in 20 years, right? I'm going to continue being a digital firefighter. Don't have any unions to support me. But she gets that concept, right? So when there is a problem, digital problem, and I go and try to see what the problem really is, A, investigate it, and B, then we do the remediation of the problem. So let me show you something that we created. This was for the purposes of a training in Europe. Around 5 years ago, a certain entity in Europe came to us and asked us, could we train European law enforcement on something related to digital forensics, and especially like a new era, like memory type analysis, network forensics. And we did. We came up with a program that's still going on. And as a part of the program, we did a web exploitation. So what we have here is a PCAP file. And the PCAP file is from the web server in the DMZ, where the inbound traffic is filtered, outbound is not. Classical scenario probably a few years ago. Then we need to confirm if incident really happened, what have happened, and we have a basically PCAP file available for that event. And then can we trace any malware in it? What can we really tell about a PCAP file? Right. So all that we have, the piece of evidence that we've got, is this PCAP file, nothing else. Right. We don't have logs. We don't have access to the server. Sounds like a cloud, maybe. So all that we have are these recorded data set basically from the communication back and forth. All right, so we come in here, and this is what we have. So what would be a good start, right? What would you do if you got a PCAP file, right? One of my friends, when I asked him that question, over many, many years, after maybe like 6 or 7 years, he said, you know what? We have so many incidents here that whenever we get new one, I just update my resume, right? So one good one could be that, just take the 5 minutes, update your resume, right, before you dive into it. Then get a glass of water, right, call your friend, ask him how he is doing, if he did any analysis similar to this, what's new out there, was he researching any blogs. The main reason why I'm doing this in Wireshark, of course, you could download some commercial tool. For example, NetWitness is a tool called NetWitness Investigator. Probably a little bit better than this. The beauty of the Wireshark is that when you work with the data that's being transmitted, you need to decode them, right? So you need to kind of understand what's being transmitted. The Wireshark has many of these filters for free. It's a beauty, right? So good tool to use, good tool to use. Okay, so let's look at some statistics here. And the first thing that is very apparent here is that when you look at the packets, how many packets were transmitted, it's very small, like 0.293 megabit per second, right? Have you seen such a card, NIC card? So it really means this is exported data set, right? It's really limited. This probably to solve takes 5 minutes, right, to solve. Shouldn't be any longer, right? Okay. When we get a file like this, where you do really start? How can you hold any information in it? So let's look at some statistics. Statistic is good, right? Anyone study statistics? It's good, right? Doesn't have all the answers, but shows you something. So let's look at the protocol hierarchy here. A big surprise is Ethernet-based technology, right? So, of course, if that was not Ethernet-based, maybe we wouldn't be able to disassemble in the first place here and decode it, right? So it's a good one, right? We got the first point. Wireshark can do the Ethernet-based technology. Now we see that the Internet Protocol version 4 involved, then most of it are TCP sessions with a hypertransfer protocol, right, HTTP. And then we see some IP version 4. Anytime you see something, you try to kind of scale what's good, what's not good, just on the first eye. At the first view, you could say, is IPv6 important here? What really happened? Can there be any tunnel, anything transmitted? But as you can see here, the volume is very low. You cannot tell from this speaker, but basically, if you dive into it, you would find out it's just basically default interface into it. Anything suspicious here when you're looking through it? They did tell us this is a web server from a DMZ zone. And there is a trivial file transfer protocol with a data transfer. Yes? Is there a way to focus, please? A little bit better? It's a good word. It's good to focus on, right? On something. Lower? Okay, I'll try this. Of course, what happens with a system based on Windows, everything's going to crash. It's a feature. Don't laugh. What should I lower to? There was a suggestion. 0? That's a good one, right? 800 by 600? Like this? Try it. How about this? Better now? All right. Good. Well, it's kind of messing up the whole Wireshark here, though. It's going to be tough to do, to be honest with you. Let's try this. Yeah, I don't think it's just going to work. Okay, cool, maybe. All right. So let's look at the more statistic here. Let's look at the endpoints. Right. Let's look at IPv4. Now, first thing that we need to answer is what IP address is the web server? Have you had these clients when you call them and you ask them, so what are you really running on your web server? Is it JBoss, the Drupal, Mambo? And I said, you know what, I don't really know. I think all of those. Or how is your web server? I mean, is it a Windows-based, is it Linux-based? I think they have all of those. Right? So you kind of have to always figure things on your own, right? You can't really trust these people. Okay. So you have to kind of first guess what is that web server. There's an answer to it. So think that through, what that would be. Also, IPv6, you mentioned that, some TCP stream here, some UDP. So still, as you can see here, this is a really small file, but it's still a lot in here, right? You kind of can't get a hold of it. How am I going to hold of this, right? But so far, statistics plays something good for me. So let's look at the conversation. And let's maybe sort them by number of bytes. Okay. Would that tell you something? That probably would tell you something, right? Number of the packets going back and forth, the answers, right? Any suggestions here for a web server? Anyone? What address? No one wants to tell, right? No one really wants to tell. Okay, so let's look at the TCP sessions. And let's turn off name resolution. That's sorted by the port. Anything interesting going on here? Something interesting is in it, right? Yeah, great. Kind of like a port scanning, but this was a tag against the web server, so it would be probably like a web vulnerability type of scan, right? Good, that's a good one, right? Of course, you will not see the ARP here, so you will not see the ARP and the resolution on the local subnet. And you see the port 80, right? So now, which one is the web server? What IP address? 135, exactly. Perfect, perfect. Okay, so at least we learned something from the statistics, right? So I told you statistics is useful, right? I wasn't lying. Now it's a UDP here. There is something interesting. So let's turn on the back on the name resolution. And I could probably just follow the stream here, and I'm not going to do that. So what do you think really happens? Imagine if you are a hacker, right? Just for a second, right? Be a bad guy. What would you really do, right? You kind of have to get something back from the machine, right, from the server. So how would you do that here, right? So where that would be. So maybe a good start would be look for anything that's basically going and originating from that web server, right? Maybe. Any what we call the SYN packets going out from the web server. Would that be a good choice, potentially? Do we agree? Okay, so let's look at it. Maybe I have a filter here. Something like this. So now we have to learn the filters. And I've got 2 sessions here, basically. So what I did here is I had to filter everything that was SYN, and I also had to add this filter. If I did not add this filter, look what would happen. I'm looking for a SYN packet, but I'm also getting acknowledgement, right? So that's not what I really want. What I really want are only these sessions. Okay, perfect. So now what's next? Who can help me? I kind of have to get paid. I'm not sure if I told you. You know, I'm depending on this as a consulting job. So I really need to get paid. So what would be the next? Call my buddy, ask him. All right, so I guess the easiest way to do this would be maybe look at the stream, right? To follow the stream. You know what? To follow the crowd. Everyone goes somewhere, right? Go and take a look at the mentality. All right, so the first one, let's reconstruct the first one. Anything suspicious here? Answer is no. How do I know? Very simple. You go, you know the Google, you go to Google, Google the manual for Wireshark, and then Google for samples, and ask them what samples are available, and they show you all good samples of the traffic, and you will find out this is a browser announcement on SMB on the Windows subnet. Okay? Okay, I scratched this one. So this one is not malicious. Confirmed by Google and Wireshark help. Right? Go back. All right. Follow the stream. Anything interesting here? In the stream? Right? Who am I? Right? So imagine, so what are we really doing? Let's look at that stream. Is that stream HTTP based? No, it's not, right? It's not. Although the exploitation probably happened over the HTTP. So someone became an authority on the system, did some directory, and then did some TFTP transfer of the file called password. He tried first time, didn't really work. He tried second time, and he did transmitted the file via TFTP. So now the obvious question would be, what really happened? Why he will try the TFTP? Around 5, 6 years ago, when we went to our client and we asked them, so what do you really filter? On outbound, anything TCP, anything UDP. And on inside, we don't really filter UDP. It's connectionless, right? But outbound just goes out there. And by the way, we use a Unix trace route. We want to trace over Cisco routers. Kind of prohibits that. It's not a good idea, right, to turn it off on a firewall. And TFTP client was directly embedded in a certain directory on the Windows machine by default. So hackers loved it. Basically, it was a way, when they got in, right away they fire up, try to get out. If they can get anything on UDP, and it's fast, right? Compared to the IP, it's fast. All right, so we have something in here. Let's switch a little bit into the presentation. So think about this. If you don't know datalossdb.org, there's a site that basically tracks how many incidents are out there. And a web and a hacking, if you look at in here, it's like a prevalent category. The exploitation that usually that you can see targets usually the web application or the user or browser, or it's a combo of everything. So if you are sitting in the right position, you probably are able to capture that information that you are looking for. Interesting study is, if you don't know Larry Ponemon, take a look at his studies. And one of the studies he did is, how much is it going to cost if you want to bring someone like us? That's not my invoice. Although some clients told me already that there's really no big difference between me and the hackers, because my invoice looks like an extortion letter from hackers. But in reality, you know, we try to help them. Someone else is trying to extort them. But these attacks maybe don't go to the millions in terms of the investigation or remediation. This is what the number here is. It's not for the notification or for replacement of the credit cards, okay? So let's go back now into our example. So what would be the next? What do you think would be the next kind of like a logical step? Yes? And how do we do that? No, we don't have any logs. Yeah, we've done it multiple times. We replayed it. It's a good idea. Takes a little bit longer, right? So there is a solution right in here offered. Yeah, that's a good idea, right? So let's now. So where we started? We really started looking at a web server, something going out, right? So when someone exploits the server, then he's trying to establish some session going out. If it's a river shell, then you should be able to see that river shell. If there's something, you should see that something, right? And we saw that. So we saw that part, and we saw TFTP being used, right? Did you see the TFTP being used? So let's see if there is a way for us to query. Query all these requests. So these are all my GET requests, right? So all just HTTP based, right? Anything interesting? I guess you need to look at the part info. All right, so let's help with this a little bit different way. It has export objects, HTTP. You kind of have to learn the tool too a little bit if you want to use it. And we go through it. And that probably wouldn't work, right? That wouldn't work really. I'm gonna be a little bit more specific. So what would be more specific? What do you think? Delete it. So let's try this. Let's go to the filters and find the one that contains TFTP. What do you think? Something like this. Good choice? Do we think it's a good choice? Do we agree? Because of the resolution, it's going to be a little bit harder. But look at here at the bottom. So the GET request is basically here. Right, the GET. Anyone? Exactly. So what the beauty here is when you get basically the plain HTTP request, right? So what the attacker here did, he used the vulnerability also exploited by a known worm called NIMDA that basically double encodes certain character, which is what, slash. And he could walk out of the directory and walk into the directory of the web server and then basically run the command of his choice. And the command of his choice was TFTP. He's trying to download the toolkit. Right? He would get the privilege of the web server itself, and then he would escalate it. The beauty of this hack is that it's basically all web-based. Has the same signature as an IMDA. So if you're an admin and you're watching this and you're thinking like, oh, I just got infected, you might have a different problem. So what was mentioned here, just to go and replay it, yeah, it would work. It's almost like you go and you have a virus in the environment and someone tells you, well, we've got this Trojan, we removed it. Was anything exfiltrated? And the answer is, no, it's just virus, right? Nothing ever happens, right? You got Trojan, nothing happens, right? And then someone's data, a certain hospital data appear on internet, and you ask them how they appear on internet. Well, just Trojan. You delete it. We cleaned it. Nothing really happened, right? All right, so now we have some idea here. There were a few commands here, and if you follow them more precisely, you find out that attacker did them in a certain sequence. So now I would say I would replace the TFTP with something better. What that better would be? How about this? Better? All right. There we go. Anything interesting? First command. What he did, he just basically looked at the web server. Can he list the files? So let's see this. Follow the stream. Look at this. That's the stream. That's the request right on the top, right? So he's just listing directory on the web server. Do you think he's the first one? No, he's not. Bad news for the admin. He's not the first one on the web server, right? Multiple viruses infected this computer. You better call the admin. Tell him that. Right. Yeah, good that exe is in there already, right? That's probably his friends already. They pull him. They're already on the server. Okay. Let's go back into it. So in the sequence, if you analyze the sequence, then you see the transfer here. So he transferred the file, and then he looks it up at the server again. Why do you think he did that? Verify it's uploaded, right? So if you reconstruct that stream, then you find out the file is there, right? So the file that he was transmitting, it's already in here, right? So let's go back to show that. Right, so he was transferred the file, who am I? And now we go in here, and who am I is in here, right? So he transfers the file into the server. And he does it for every time. Basically, he transfers the file, which is good, right? Then he transfers another file called tono, right? And then he runs this at the end. C good minus L P, and he parses through the command line. Isn't it really powerful? Imagine this. He's doing everything through the web protocol. Through the web protocol, he's able to walk out the directory, call the local command, and execute it. Right? How long do you think this would take to hack? 15, 20 seconds? Probably all scripted it from the beginning and then holding the shell in his hand, most likely. Yeah, there is something going with the port 777 here. The question is it really a backdoor here on a port 777, right? What is it? Tiny. There should be a tiny tono, right? Yeah, there should be something. There should be something in here. So what do you think? What do you think is happening in here? So okay. So what really happened in that conversation? Look at the logic. So when we get the file, we really go backwards, right? Because I was looking at the session that was originating from the web server. But it's really backwards when I'm looking at it right now. So the information goes, I went from the backwards going upwards. So what really happened? Yeah, there was a netcat. Why would he do that? Why would he open up a netcat? Not necessarily the reverse shell. What really happened here is when he got into the server, he got the privilege with the credentials of the web server. Is that sufficient for him to walk to any directory he wants to? No. So he needs to escalate it, right? He needs to escalate the privilege. So he does a trick. He downloads another exploit. In the sequence in the order that you saw, there was an exploit that was called good, right? Something that was really good, and asked him, who do you want to be today? Right? And then he runs a command that you saw, the who am I, and he is anti-system authority. And he goes into cd in NT2 directory, right? System32. What do you think follow next? This was actually terminal server. What do you think is going to follow? At the bottom, go to cd repair, directory, copy the same into the password. Remember you saw that password to begin with, the transfer? All right, you just copied the same, got the same. Now what's happening on your network? Like a Swiss cheese. Terminal server. He's signing after this. He's not putting any backdoor. He's signing directly with user's credentials, right into all applications that you share, your Citrix, whatever you share, he owns it. And most of the companies, now we see more of a segregation. So what principle really he breached? There's no real separation between inside and outside credentials for authentication. Everything is tied into the AD. He gets the hold of the database from a terminal server. It's pretty much good to go. Right? If you separate those credentials, then he wouldn't be able to walk in. So the beauty for him here was that he did not have to put any backdoor. He just basically went into it, spread it through the network, and then he could plant the backdoors wherever he wanted to. But he was already your user. He was already your admin. And of course, you did not have to send him a check for maintaining your network properly. Right? Okay, let's look at, there was another port here that was interesting. And it was port 2000. Remember? Remember this? How did you get that? Through the HTTP. Remember? We were assembling the stream. So basically, we're just looking at the source or destination port, right? So the pattern of the traffic appears through the HTTP as well from the port where the destination actually was and the traffic was originating into. Isn't that interesting, right? So you always have to think a little bit different. We had an admin, and he said, well, it was a UDP-based type of worm that hit us. When you have a UDP-based worm doing a buffer overflow in your system, is the outbound connection going to be UDP? Doesn't have to be. In reality, it doesn't have to be. Here's the HTTP, and then different session is going out. So that's what you most likely need to look for. You need to look for different protocols that were used as a part of exploitation on a network. Because he's going to use what's available to target a server, but then he has his own toolkit, his own CNC channels, his own protocol, his own strategy, how he's going to get out. And he will try all of those, basically, like a UDP-based, TFTP, try the netcat. And if he can't get out, he will get out. All right. One piece that we did not do here is the TFTP. So we should probably go and take a look at these TFTP streams. Now, I mean, most of you play with the Wireshark. So really beauty here is that it parses out based on the OSI model, which I'm going to get into it. And then that's also the separation of the protocol itself. So decodes the protocol and shows you the content. So for example, in here, it shows you the file itself. It shows you the acknowledgement. It shows you the block. It shows you the packet that you are on. So here we have TFTP. And I want to list all the, let's do type. I would like to see all the transfers. So as you can see, you need to know a little bit of these filters, right? You kind of have to know work with the tool. But these are all the transfers that did happen. Good, tunnel, and here's the password. So a few of them were requests, and they basically read request and one was a write. So these requests, how he originated these requests? Not through TFTP, but I see them here because they were captured as a part of the conversation. So they were originated as an HTTP request to a web server, initiating the command line and transferring the file via TFTP. So the web server TFTP client asked for the file that was sitting somewhere and pulled that file to the web server. Again, a little bit different, right? So you have a TCP-based protocol. I'm asking for a UDP-based basic application, getting the files into the web server. Okay, so what about this? Follow UDP stream. What do you think about the follow UDP stream? How many of you believe in UDP stream? How many? I told you UDP doesn't have any stream. No? It does? But Wireshark is telling me it does. Right? It's application I use. I mean, these guys, they really know what they're doing. No? They're just kind of laughing at this project. All right, so I follow this UDP stream. Get this. Where is my file? Where is my file? Someone stole it before I got it? Where is it? So now, when you work in this era, you need to understand the protocol. So you have to go where? Google, RFC, read the manual, read the protocol, and understand how the protocol really operates. And you will realize that there is a request for a data, and then the data are coming in a block as the afterward session. So also when you're loading the site, you think everything comes as a one HTTP GET request to your computer? It's parsed into certain sessions, right? Into certain streams of that website as a certain content. It doesn't come like, oh, I do the GET and a whole CNN appears on my computer. It doesn't work like that. There are these streams that basically almost, if you frame the site, the content is being delivered. Some packets are fragmented, some are not. That depends on the size. Same here. If you read the specification for the protocol, you would quickly figure that this is only the request. So the block of the data follows right beneath that. So let's look at in here. And I could just do that very quickly. Look at the number here, 5092. Okay, and as you can see here, here is my read request, and here's my first block of the data. You see it? Right. So that's my first packet. All right, so let's follow this. Better? Better, right? What's the MZ? Program cannot be run in the MS-DOS mode. This looks like a program. And it's a real program. Who am I? So basically it's a file. Of course, I would have to clean it. So I would just pick the conversation. Now I would save it as a raw file. And then what? Random my computer. No? You guys don't do that? You don't just random files you find on the internet on your computer? See what happens? Have backup ready? No? You call your friend, ask him, I'll send you a file for analysis. Just open up, tell me what you see on your screen. No, literally, that's what I do. I have a friend like that. But he is the binary reverse engineering expert. So I send him the file, he looks at it and tells me what he sees on his screen in his sandbox. Right? That's a good friend to have. He doesn't mind. He always sends me first some legal disclaimer how much he wants for the work. So. All right, so this is the file. So that's how we would save the file from it. So now, if you think the web exploitations, later as you can solve, we basically could solve the file without having access to the logs, without basically doing heavy forensic on a web server, and everything was basically in the PCAP file. The Beauty of today's era is that it's all thanks to interactions. If there's no interaction with the system, the data would not be recorded. It would not have the PCAP file. Right? You want 100% security? Don't do any business. Cut the wire. No one's going to talk to you. There's not going to be any PCAP. I guarantee you, most likely, very secure. Right? So, but thanks to interactions, you're able to get the underlying layer and basically record the data and then do the analysis. So this kind of shows the powerful side of the network forensic. Now, usually what happens, for example, like in a corporate espionage cases, at some point, this communication switches to something different, like a crypto channel, like a CNC type of channel. If you didn't start it early, you probably didn't capture the component that creates the crypto on that system. But if you start it early with the capture of the data, you also get the crypto library or something that these guys install on the system. And then you have the same advantage as they do, because you can go and decrypt the data if you know how to get it from that crypto library. So it is a powerful tool to do that, to basically analyze the web data. And it also gives you a different view on the traffic. Now, I have something in here very similar. Anyone? Yes, how did you know? Yeah, it's a good one. I thought you knew by 007300. No? Okay, so this is a cache obfuscate data. How many of you have seen this? Few, right? Very famous hack, actually, right? Maybe a few years ago. What was special about this? Application firewalls. At that time, application firewalls did not have decoding of the cache encoded data. Just one thing that you missed. I think it was one or two vendors, I don't remember exactly which one, that actually did encode it. So imagine SQL injection 1 = 1 apostrophe would fly through your firewall as a cache encoded. Scary? Scary. And that's what usually hackers look for. It's like this hack. It's nothing really dramatic. If it's an opportunistic attack, it's nothing really dramatic. They basically look for the weakness in a system and then exploit that weakness. That one thing that someone forgot, right? Someone forgot something on the server. This is a brief exploitation, for example, of the victim. The open source tools, we created our own bots to do this. We were looking at the various products, but they are quite expensive. So then we decided that we're going to go and compile our own VM machine with some of the tools. I just want to show you some of them here that we basically use in our arsenal. TCP extract is one of the tools that can go and kind of carve the data out of the PCAP file. So you tell the tool the parameters, and it goes and grabs it. So for example, when you saw here the executable, TCP extract will go to the data and pull all the executable right from the file, or all the documents that are being transmitted from the file. The chaos reader, we reprogrammed a few times to do different things. It's a really neat two-page Perl script that does decoding of the data. And especially when you're dealing with the CNC channels, then you will have to write something custom. So you will have to write something custom to decode that stream. You will not be able to do that. Like what I was doing in here was quite trivial, because every protocol that I was touching on, Wireshark actually knew in the arsenal. So it could decode that protocol. But imagine someone writes a custom channel over HTTP. Then you don't have a decoder for it. Right? So you have to write your own decoder, kind of like go and understand, reverse engineer that protocol and the sessions in that protocol as much as you can. Of course, most of these sessions do go encrypted at some point. As I said at the beginning, the hack might not be encrypted, but then they go encrypted. So it's going to be harder. So you have to look very carefully at a part that is not encrypted and figure out as much as you can about the malware. Some of the malware, it's as simple as one library on a computer, and then only downloads the tool to the memory of the computer. And then what happens in the memory? How many of you can maybe create a snapshot memory like in 10 seconds? We still want to search for those people. There's a job for them, I guarantee you. Memory is big. It's multiple gigs at these days. On servers, it's really big. So you can't really do, even a dump of a process, it's really hard to do, because you need to know which process you need to dump. The program does and exits the memory. Of course, there are techniques to carve the memory, kind of like to carve for its own space, but a little bit harder to do. Another good program that you might want to look at it is definitely Wireshark that I presented in here. As you can see, it's quite a powerful tool. There's also T-Shark, a version, text version of it. SSL dump, it's an interesting project because it will provide certain understanding into the layer of encryption. So SSL itself has a structure. Of course, if you don't have a certificate, you can't decrypt it, but you can make the data representation of what's encrypted and what the sources, destinations are in the conversation, how much data was transmitted probably through the channel. And this applies. I usually get a question, what about wireless? As long as it's Ethernet-based technology, it will work. There's no real difference on the wireless. Okay. I wrote a nice article on this on Forensic Focus. You might want to go and look it up, which basically has all these tools and how we put this box together a few years ago. Of course, you need to know how to record this. There's a little bit of the magic to this, how to record the data. And there are commercial tools that you can probably use. Important piece is, this is something you're going to be living with. These are the frames in your head. These are the frames of the protocol. Like, what is it? IPv4 protocol. Okay, first 4 bytes. What's in them? Next 4 bytes. What's in them? What that value actually is. And then you're looking at the data, and every day when you're doing this, it becomes really automatic. What options are enabled? What's the model? This is a tool called Exploitations. You might want to look into that as well. If you use, for example, Chaos Reader on this with a hexadump, you would probably get the answer almost right away. Like in 3 or 4 minutes, you would be able to, from the HTML report, go and say most likely what happened in here. The same with Exploitations. If you ran it through it, most likely you would get it. Okay. This is the Chaos Reader. This is getting pose requests. And of course, some tips for the businesses here. So let's go back into the Wireshark. And let's look at the request itself. So now basically what we can tell the other person is, yes, it was a good thing that you updated your resume. You actually been hacked. It wasn't a virus. Although your IDS is reported as a virus, someone held a hand on the keyboard while they were doing this. Really what happened was they exploited known problem, double decode, and then transfer a few files back and forth. They did leverage the privilege on the server. They escalated privilege on the web server, and they dump your same file, which most likely they cracked because your passwords are weak. And they are now all around your network. And probably the only thing you have are these few IP addresses from these 3,000 proxy hosts that you need to start chasing on your environment. So that will be pretty much a good story to tell. Thank you very much. Anyone has any questions? Yes? No, you can't. Usually you need to use, either you have a box that does it for you, right, or you have a commercial tool that already does it. So some organizations, especially government and law enforcement, they do have devices that do capture the PKIP file already. So all the time, all the time. It's more of a trigger when there is something malicious, but they scan for certain patterns, and when they see the pattern, they record the pattern. Any more questions? Sure. Yeah, that's true, but most likely, most of the people are going to give you a PKIP format. That's the reality. I guess it's a format of the choice for those individuals. So it's not really your choice. It's a choice of someone giving you the file, and they will export it in a PKIP format for you. They will hash it. They will send it to you. Or there is a problem with the recording in the first place, because you can lose You can lose the data on the NIC card. You can lose data by the kernel. And you can lose data by misconfiguration of that recording device. So there are more errors. I would say there are more errors on the way that device is implemented as it is with the format itself. And if you don't have documented, like most of the data that we get, no one really documents the losses for those devices. So you get the file, but no one really tells you what got lost in the translation. And here in a reconstruction, if you miss one packet, you might not be able to reinject the packet between the stream, right? So it really means you follow something, it's not going to reconstruct. Right? Any more questions? Yes, sir. I updated my resume. That was my first thing. In Wireshark, okay. I started looking for the outbound traffic from the web server. So I tried to profile what the IP address of the web server is. And then I looked for anything that would be initiated from that web server. If it's a web server, there should not be much initiated from that web server, other than maybe regular patches from the web server. But there shouldn't be really literally any traffic originated from it. So instance would be like a reverse shell, right, being ran, any buffer overflow being ran. Yeah, sure. The reality is these guys, when they get in, they wipe it, the log. And since log is in a space where it's constantly overwritten, most likely it's not going to be recoverable. So in reality, you're not going to get any logs. We just had a machine here in a city. It was a Unix-based machine, and it wasn't even like a secure wipe. Once they realized that the processor is spinning on that machine quite fast, which they see, just run the top command, and they see that machine is processing quite a bit, they just not even wipe it, they just delete the logs and just let it go. They don't even bother. Like you see the tool being compiled, it's like a case like a month old. Did you just see the tool compile right in a line, stick into the folder, not even deleting the tool, delete the logs. Actually, you see the command initiated to delete the logs from a line here to line here. That's it. And you don't have logs. Then try to do any recovery, it's not there, it's overwritten. So you can't really, reality is you can't really rely on logs. You can rely on logs if someone is transferring them to a different machine. If there's a collector that pulls it in a timely manner. But as you saw here, this takes maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Plus maybe 5 seconds of wiping. So you have a 20 seconds window. So it almost has to be kind of real-time system, which if you have a larger network, most likely is not the case. They were wiped out? Were you able to track that SQL injection like from beginning to end? Not well though. Yeah, I tell you, yeah, it really helps. What helped me is that I've been doing the pen testing as well as cyber and forensics. I see a really big benefit to it. Because most individuals that I work with, even in the cyber area and digital forensics, they don't know much about the pen testing. And if you don't have the good feel about the applications, right, the web applications, then it's very hard for you to judge what's real, what's not real. What is the myth? Any more questions? Okay, so what I did was, in here, if you filter for that IP address and you do only SYN, then you also get acknowledgement. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to filter that I would only see let me show it to you, and you will get it. Okay. Right. So here's what happened on the right side. So what really happens in a handshake? You get SYN, SYN-ACK. So you wouldn't really filter. So you would see all the acknowledgements. So if you want to filter the acknowledgements, then I suppress the flags. There's also, are you familiar with the masking, like in the TCP dump, the parentheses and hexacode, basically because it's 8-bit, where the flag is being set is basically 1 bit. So you could use the masking, but it doesn't work on some version of the Wireshark. So it can be done a little more fancy. 5 minutes? Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, sure. I don't want to say I'm that good, but I usually get into 5 minutes into it. And it's just what most people miss is that you have to have some system, right? So statistic is very good. So there's like a TCP dstat program that runs a statistic on a file. And it's a really great tool, right? The statistic is really good. Then profiling geolocations is very good too. So Wireshark has a plugin for geolocations. And all these things, when you are doing this type of work, you look at the statistical analysis, geolocations, data, like where you really came from. You see something from Asia on American-based system that they never do business in Asia, you have the IP address, and then you basically test all those hypotheses. And then you look for data being originated from those servers that been compromised. So there has to be, if someone is getting something, they need to get something from the server. In reality, they came into the network to get something from the server. And of course, it doesn't have to be that server. So in a SQL injection, what really happens, you have a web server that's processing, and you have maybe SQL server behind it. But they go through that web server to get into the store procedure on that SQL server. And they zip the data, they shift the data, it's going out. As I showed you in here, you are not looking for the same session. So the session that made a request is just the request to do something. And then you follow that session, that protocol, to somewhere else. So you have to jump to that. And in most cases, I would say like 95% of the cases, it does work. Where it really doesn't work is the corporate espionage. Because that malware is really custom, and it's almost like a DLL file loaded on the secretary computer, goes to a personal Yahoo page of some individual. How is that malicious? Not really. Then you have to be really creative. If this secretary actually knows this Yahoo individual and is in a contact, you're asking all kinds of personal questions, has to get boss permission, sign 10 agreements related to sexual harassment. Right? You're welcome. Any more questions? Great. Thank you.